My husband's hands were around my throat. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Not because I was calm, because I was a journalist. And even dying on my kitchen floor, some part of me was still documenting. 13, 14, 15. My baby stopped kicking. That terrified me more than my own death. At count 19, my fingers found my phone. 3 clicks, 1 button, then the darkness took me. I was dead for 4 minutes. But here is the thing, Daniel Cole did not know when he stood over my body and watched my heart stop. I'd been recording him for 6 months. And what that recording captured, his confession, the names of the women before me, the 20-year cover-up his own mother had been running from the shadows, would not just send him to prison. It would bring down an entire family that had been making women disappear and calling it accidents since before I was born. But surviving was only the beginning. Because when I came back to life, the evidence vanished. A witness's house burned down. My own mother went on national television to call me crazy. And the man who killed me walked out of the courthouse in a fresh suit, smiling at the cameras. So I did the only thing I had left. I told the world, stay with me, because what happened next will change the way you see everything. Lesson statement. This story carries one truth worth carrying with you long after it ends. The most dangerous thing an abuser fears is not a woman who fights back with her fists. It is a woman who documents quietly, plans carefully, and absolutely refuses, to let her truth be buried. If any part of what you are about to hear feels familiar, I need you to know that feeling in your gut is not paranoia. It is not you being too sensitive or too dramatic. It is your survival instinct, and it is right. Trust it. Before we begin, if someone in your life needs to hear a story like this one, this is your moment to share it, not tomorrow. Right now, before you forget. Because somewhere tonight, there is a woman listening alone who needs to know she is not crazy and she is not alone. Your share could be the thing that reaches her. And if you are new here, this channel exists for exactly this reason. Hit subscribe and stay with us. We bring you stories every week about women who refuse to be erased. You will not regret it. Now, let us begin.
I was dead for 4 minutes. My husband watched. And the worst part? When I came back to life, he was already planning how to finish the job. My name is Rebecca Cole. I am 34 years old. I was a journalist. I was a wife. I was 7 months pregnant when my husband's hands closed around my throat on our kitchen floor and squeezed until my heart stopped beating. 4 minutes of nothing. No breath, no pulse, no life. Just the cold tile against my back, the kitchen light flickering above me, and my husband standing over me, watching, with the patience of a man who had done this before. Because here is what I did not know that night. He had, and here is what he did not know. I had been recording everything for 6 months. The voice-activated recorder, hidden inside a white ceramic candle on my kitchen counter, captured every word he said, his confession, my struggle. The exact moment everything went silent. What that recording revealed would not just destroy my husband. It would expose 3 generations of a family that had been killing women and calling it accidents for 20 years. But surviving Daniel Cole was only the beginning, because when I went public with the truth, witnesses started dying, evidence started burning, and my own mother appeared on national television to tell America I was crazy. This is the story of how I refused to stay silent, how I fought back against a system designed to protect my attacker, how I proved that the most dangerous thing a victim can become is a survivor with nothing left to lose. My name is Rebecca Cole, and this is 4 Minutes Dead. Before we begin, I need to say something directly to you. If your partner's first instinct in any crisis is to protect himself instead of you, that is not love. That is a warning. Trust that feeling. It matters more than you know. It started, as these things always do, with a version of myself I no longer recognize. 6 years ago, I was Rebecca Harris, investigative journalist, Tribune staff writer, 2 regional press awards on my desk, and a reputation for finding the truth, no matter how deep it was buried. I was good at my job. I was proud of that. I met Daniel Cole at a Journalism Awards gala in downtown Chicago on a Thursday night in October. He was there as a guest of one of the honorees. His firm handled the man's financial portfolio. Daniel had no professional reason to be interested in the ceremony itself, but he was very interested in me. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of handsome that reads as trustworthy at first glance, old money written into the way he stood, comfortable, unhurried, like a man who had never once worried about a bill in his life. He was funny in that quiet, self-deprecating way that feels more genuine than performed. He laughed at my jokes before I finished them. My best friend Joanna was there that night. She leaned over 20 minutes after Daniel introduced himself and whispered, "He looks like a Ken doll who spent a year in the wilderness reading Hemingway. Extremely pretty, deeply suspicious." "Run!" I laughed. I thought she was being ridiculous. I did not run. The first 2 years were genuinely wonderful. I want to be honest about that because I think it matters. Abusive relationships do not begin with abuse. They begin with something real, or something that feels real enough that you build your entire life around it before you understand what you are actually standing on. We drove up to Door County every fall for the autumn color. We had a farmer's market routine on Sunday mornings. Coffee first, then produce, then the cheese vendor Daniel could spend 45 minutes talking to about aging processes. I found it endearing. I found everything about him endearing in those early years. That was the point. The shifts began in year 3. Gradual, almost imperceptible. The kind of changes that only become visible when you look backward from a safer place. "You don't need to hustle so hard anymore, babe. I make enough for both of us. You should be able to breathe." He said it gently, lovingly even, and I was tired. Tired in the way that investigative journalism makes you tired, running on deadline adrenaline and too much coffee. His words sounded like care. They felt like someone finally giving me permission to rest. I left the Tribune, went freelance, told myself it was a choice. Then the freelance assignments started creating tension. He would come home while I was on the phone with a source, and his jaw would tighten just slightly. He would ask who I had been talking to, then wave off my answer with, "Never mind. Doesn't matter." In a tone that made absolutely clear it mattered very much. Friends stopped coming around. It happened so slowly, I could not point to the moment it changed. Daniel always had a reason. "Joanna was kind of rude last time, don't you think? Your college friends always pull you away for the whole weekend. I just like having you to myself. Is that so wrong?" It did not sound wrong. It sounded like love. He moved my car keys twice in 1 week. Both times I searched the apartment for 20 minutes before finding them in a completely logical place. On the hook by the door, exactly where they should be. He was sympathetic. "Baby, you've been so scattered lately. Are you sleeping enough?" He said it with such genuine-sounding concern that I thanked him for noticing. He quoted conversations I had no memory of. Dinner plans I had apparently agreed to. Promises I had supposedly made. I would stand in the kitchen trying to reconstruct conversations in my head, certain they had never happened, and then doubt myself completely. By the time he finished explaining what I had said and why I had said it, I knew the word: gaslighting. I had written an article about it 4 years earlier. I had interviewed survivors and thought, with the particular arrogance of someone who has never experienced something firsthand, this would never happen to me. I would recognize it. I did not recognize it. Because knowing a word and living inside it are two entirely different things. the knot in my stomach every time I heard his key in the door. I told myself it was anticipation, the way I rehearsed conversations before having them. I told myself I was being thoughtful, the way I had stopped mentioning Joanna's name at home. I told myself I was keeping the peace. I was disappearing. One small accommodation at a time, and I was so focused on keeping things smooth and quiet and manageable that I could not see the shape of what was being built around me. It was around my 5th month of pregnancy that something shifted. I cannot explain it precisely. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the biology of carrying another life, my protective systems activating at a cellular level. Maybe it was the night his hand stayed on my arm just a few seconds too long during an argument, his fingers pressing just firmly enough to leave no visible mark, but enough pressure that something in my body registered what my conscious mind was still refusing to name. I started documenting, small things at first, a notebook hidden behind the cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink. Dates, times, what he said, what I remembered, what he claimed I said or remembered. I backed up text messages to a secret email account, and I ordered a voice-activated recorder online, paid for it with a prepaid cash card, had it shipped to Joanna's address. It arrived in a box shaped like a white ceramic candle. I placed it on the kitchen counter between the coffee maker and the window, right where he would never think to look because it was too obvious, too decorative, too thoroughly a part of the room's background. I was a journalist. I knew how to gather evidence. I just never imagined I would need to gather it about my husband. Here is what I need you to understand. If you are listening to this and something feels familiar, gaslighting does not begin with screaming. It begins with confusion, with small moments of self-doubt that seem entirely reasonable in isolation. If someone in your life is consistently making you question your own memory, write things down, date and time everything. Keep it somewhere they cannot access. Documentation is not paranoia. Documentation is protection, and it saved my life. The seeds of suspicion were planted. The recorder was running. And on a Tuesday morning in March, Daniel left for an emergency meeting and forgot, for the first and only time in 6 years, to close his laptop. He had never once left his laptop open and unattended. Passwords changed monthly, screen always closed, always locked, phone always face down or in his pocket. In 6 years of marriage, I had never seen his screen unlocked and unattended. But that Tuesday morning, he rushed out for what he called an emergency client situation, grabbed his coat, grabbed his keys, kissed my cheek, and left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. The woman I had been in year 1 of our marriage would have closed it without looking. The woman I had been in year 3 would have looked and then convinced herself she had no right to. But I was neither of those women anymore. I was 7 months pregnant and sleeping with one eye open, and I had a notebook hidden under my sink and a recorder shaped like a candle on my counter. I looked. The first file was a spreadsheet, client accounts, transfers, numbers that did not reconcile with anything legitimate. Daniel managed investment portfolios for some of the most prominent families in Chicago. He had access to over $250 million in assets. He had been stealing from them. $4.1 million, skimmed from elderly clients over 22 months. Small amounts initially, growing progressively larger, distributed across 17 shell accounts in 4 states. Meticulous, patient, methodical. The work of a man who had been doing this long enough to feel confident he would not be caught. I photographed every screen with my phone. The second thing I found was a separate phone account I had never seen. One contact, texted and called hundreds of times over the past 2 years. Saved only as a red heart emoji. The billing address traced to a post office box in Evanston, registered to a name, Melissa Bradford. The third thing broke me. Photos. A woman in her mid-30s, blonde, carefully pretty. Two children, a boy around 5 and a girl around 3. They had Daniel's eyes, his nose, his particular way of tilting his head slightly to the left when he was pleased about something. In one photo, Daniel stood with his arm around the woman, both of them wearing wedding rings. My husband had another family. I sat at the kitchen counter for a very long time. My hand rested on my pregnant belly. I felt my daughter kick, busy, insistent, running out of room, while I stared at evidence of a parallel life I had never known existed. A whole other world Daniel had been maintaining with the same meticulous attention he brought to everything he did. I thought many things in those minutes. I will not pretend I was calm or strategic or immediately clear-headed. I sat there with my hand on my belly, and I felt the specific quality of grief that comes with realizing you have loved a fiction, that the person you built your life around was never quite real, that you have been, for years, in a relationship with a performance. Then I stood up, because I was a journalist, and journalists do not sit with grief when there is still evidence to gather. I copied everything, every file, every photo, every document, to 3 separate encrypted cloud accounts. Uploaded the photographs I had taken, backed up the backups. Then I found the plane ticket, one way, Grand Cayman Islands, the following Friday. 1 seat, he was going to run, take the stolen money, his other family or neither, and disappear. Leave me pregnant and penniless and completely dismantled by years of careful, patient, deliberate erosion, unless I dismantled him first. I closed the laptop, made his coffee, 2 sugars, stirred exactly 20 times clockwise. The man counted the stirs. He actually watched my hands if I moved too fast, said nothing, but the attention was there. That particular supervisory focus he applied to everything in his environment. I had learned to do it correctly because it was easier than the alternative. I stood at the counter and stirred and thought, who counts coffee stirs? Surgeons, chess grandmasters, people who need absolute control over every variable around them. And I thought, serial killers. Then I made it perfect anyway, because I needed time, I needed a plan, and I needed Daniel to believe I was still the compliant, scattered, emotionally fragile woman he had spent 3 years constructing. I texted Joanna a single phrase we had agreed on months earlier when I first started to feel something was wrong but could not yet name it. Red velvet. It meant, be ready. Something is coming. I need you. She texted back one word. Always. I checked my recorder, confirmed it was running, confirmed it was hidden, and I waited. Here's the actionable truth I want you to take from this chapter. If you suspect something is wrong, do not confront immediately. Copy first, document first, upload to accounts your partner cannot access. Give copies to someone you trust completely. Then breathe, then plan. Confronting without evidence leaves you vulnerable and unprotected. Confronting with documented evidence means that no matter what happens next, the truth exists somewhere outside your own word against his. Daniel came home at 9:40 that night. Late, which was unusual. His face was controlled in the way it got when something had gone wrong, jaw tight, eyes slightly too focused, the deliberate blankness of a man suppressing something significant. I was in the kitchen. The recorder was running. He dropped his keys on the counter with slightly more force than necessary. I heard them land, felt the small vibration through the floor. Rebecca. His voice was calm, too calm. Still water before something moves beneath it. I turned slowly. Coffee pot in my hand. Hey, long day? Did you touch my laptop today? The question landed with precision. He was watching my face. I had spent 9 years interviewing politicians, executives, and twice convicted criminals. I had sat across a table from a man who had embezzled from a children's hospital and maintained a completely neutral expression while he explained his reasoning. I knew how to lie with my eyes. Your laptop? No. Why? I set the coffee pot down carefully, tilted my head slightly, curious, unconcerned, mildly confused. He held my gaze for a long moment, searching, calculating, the specific look of a man running probability assessments in real time. Then he smiled. It did not reach his eyes. My mistake. Forget it. He walked to the refrigerator, opened it, stared inside at nothing. The silence between us stretched like a wire pulled to the absolute edge of its tolerance. I went back to making coffee. 20 stirs. Perfect. Who is Claire? I do not know why I said it. The name had been sitting in the back of my mind for 3 days. From the old emails I had found buried in an archived folder on his laptop. Emails from 12 years ago that stopped abruptly after a single police report, filed and then dismissed within 3 weeks. Claire Dawson, a name with no innocent explanation for appearing in my husband's deleted correspondence connected to a strangulation charge that had simply vanished. Daniel went very still. The refrigerator hummed. What did you say? I turned to face him. Something in me had made a decision before my conscious mind caught up with it. Claire Dawson, I said. And Amber Whitfield. Who are they, Daniel? What happened to them? His face changed. I watched it happen in what felt like slow motion. The mask did not slip. It dissolved. The charming, patient, effortlessly reasonable man I had married simply ceased to exist, like a channel changing on a television. What was underneath was something I had glimpsed only in fragments before. In the pressure of his hand on my arm, in the way his eyes went flat when he was truly angry, but I had never seen it fully until that moment. You should not have looked, he said quietly. I backed up one step. My hand found the counter behind me. What did you do to them? He moved fast, faster than I had any reason to expect from a man who had always presented himself as so deliberately, carefully controlled. His hand closed around my throat before I could step back or reach for my phone or make any sound at all. The coffee pot fell, shattered on the tile. Brown liquid spread across the white floor. You should have stayed quiet, Daniel said. His breath was hot against my face. His fingers tightened with a mechanical steadiness that was somehow more terrifying than rage would have been. Like Claire, like all the others. Others. Plural. The word reached me through the pressure building in my skull. There were others, more than Claire, more than Amber. I clawed at his hands. My fingernails scraped skin. He did not flinch. My vision blurred at the edges. My lungs screamed. My daughter stopped kicking inside me. The sudden, terrifying stillness of a baby sensing danger. And that frightened me more than my own dying. I counted seconds, a journalist's reflex, always documenting, always marking time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My phone had fallen when he grabbed me. It was on the floor, 3 inches from my fingers. I had programmed the emergency function 8 months ago. 3 clicks, 911 connected immediately. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. With the last of my strength, I pressed it. 1, 2, 3. The darkness came. I do not know what death looks like for other people. I did not see a white light or a highlight reel of my greatest moments. What I saw was small and ordinary and specific. Well, Daniel bringing me sunflowers on a Tuesday for no reason. The sound of his laugh in the early years when it was still something that felt real. The 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Me sitting on a gas station bathroom floor, laughing and crying simultaneously. The yellow nursery we had painted together on a Saturday in November, a mobile of paper stars above an empty crib, and underneath those memories, another truth rising. The first time he raised his voice, the first time his hand on my arm left no mark but stayed in my muscle memory for days. 5 years of making myself smaller, 5 years of disappearing one small accommodation at a time, and now I was dead, somewhere very far away. Sirens. A door coming off its hinges. A woman's voice, sharp and steady. Come on, come on, stay with me. Hands on my chest, pressure, the mechanical rhythm of someone keeping my heart beating by force. 6 minutes. That is how long it took before my heart started again. When I opened my eyes, I was in an ambulance. A paramedic leaned over me. Sharp blue eyes, dark hair pulled back tightly. Name tag, Kate Morrison. Her hands were steady, and her voice was the most grounding sound I had heard in what felt like years. Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. I squeezed. Good. You're okay. You're safe. You're in an ambulance. My voice was barely there, a whisper held together with nothing. Is there a recording? Kate looked at me for one long moment. We have your phone. We have a recorder from your kitchen. And we have your husband in handcuffs on your front lawn. You did that. You saved yourself. I started crying, not from sadness, from the specific, overwhelming relief of a person who has just survived something unsurvivable and cannot yet fully believe it. Your baby, Kate said immediately. Heart rate elevated, but strong and steady. She is a fighter. Like her mom, I managed. Kate smiled. Exactly like her mom. The hospital was bright and cold and smelled like antiseptic. I spent 3 days there recovering. Bruising to my trachea, petechial hemorrhaging, the clinical language of exactly how close I had come to permanent damage. Detective Laura Briggs arrived on my first night, 20 years in domestic violence cases. She had the kind of steady, unshockable competence that comes from having seen genuinely everything. But when she listened to my recording, something shifted in her face. This is one of the clearest recordings I have ever heard in 20 years of this work, she said. His confession, your struggle, the 911 call connecting. Combined with your medical evidence, the DA has more than enough. What about the others? He said there were others. We are looking into every name. You focus on healing. Let us handle the rest. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Daniel was denied bail. The judge cited the one-way plane ticket, the offshore accounts, and the severity of the attack. His father, Robert Cole, a sitting federal judge, was forced to recuse himself from anything related to the case. The media picked up the story within 48 hours. My face was everywhere. For the first time in years, I let myself believe it might actually be over. Joanna arrived at the hospital with a rolling suitcase, a tote bag, and the energy of a woman who had been waiting for permission to go to war. I brought 4 things, she announced, dropping into the chair beside my bed. Dry shampoo, because you have been through something, and it shows. A phone charger, because yours is at 11%, and that is stressing me out considerably. Snacks, because hospital food is a form of additional punishment. And she produced a folder approximately 2 inches thick. Every prenup violation your husband committed, organized chronologically with color-coded tabs. I laughed. It hurt my throat considerably. We have a prenup, I said. You had a prenup. Past tense. He violated approximately 19 clauses the moment he tried to kill you. We are going to take the house, the accounts, the vintage watch collection, and whatever dignity he has remaining, in that exact order. For the first time in days, I felt something that resembled hope. Then, 2 weeks later, a Detective Briggs called. Her voice was wrong. Flat and away, it had not been before. Rebecca, the recording from your phone, The audio file has been corrupted, remotely wiped, overwritten with static. It is completely unusable. The bottom dropped out of everything. That's not possible. I backed it up. 3 separate cloud accounts. They're all gone. All 3. Whoever did this had access to your accounts, your passwords, your security questions, everything. Daniel is in jail. He doesn't have access to a computer. No, but his family does. That afternoon, the Cole family posted $2 million bail like it was a minor inconvenience. Ankle monitor, restraining order, released to his parents' home pending trial. I watched it on television from my hospital bed. Daniel walking out of the courthouse in a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage. His lawyer speaking to reporters about misunderstandings and false accusations. Daniel looking directly into the nearest camera, almost smiling. He was free. The man who had killed me was free, and I had no proof it had ever happened. If you have ever watched someone who hurt you walk away without consequences, I need you to know you are not alone. The system is not always built to protect people like us. But that does not mean we are without options. It means we have to be smarter, louder, and more relentless than the people trying to silence us. Which is exactly what I became. I moved to a safe house. Unlisted address known only to Joanna and Detective Briggs. I slept with a chair wedged under the door handle. I checked the locks before bed. And then I did the thing I knew how to do better than anything else in the world. I investigated. Finding Claire Dawson took 3 days of searching public records databases, archived court documents, and social media archaeology going back 12 years. What I found was this. Claire Dawson had filed a police report against Daniel Cole. Assault, strangulation. The injuries described were remarkably similar to mine. The case had been dismissed within 3 weeks. 6 months after the dismissal, Claire signed a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for $450,000 from the Cole Family Trust. Then she disappeared completely. No social media, no public records, no trace after the date of the NDA. Either in hiding or no longer alive to hide. Finding Amber Whitfield was easier and harder simultaneously. A restraining order from 15 years ago. Photographs of bruising that documented injuries to her neck, arms, and face. The restraining order dismissed by a judge who turned out to be a longtime golf partner of Robert Cole, Daniel's father. Unlike Claire, Amber had not completely erased herself. She had changed her name, moved to rural Vermont, built a quiet life, but she had not fully disappeared. And I had spent 9 years finding people who did not want to be found. I drove 7 hours to her front door on a gray Wednesday morning. The woman who opened it was in her early 40s, tired eyes, a high-necked sweater despite the mild weather. She looked at my pregnant belly, at the yellowing bruises still visible on my neck above my collar. She did not look surprised to see me. "I know why you're here," she said. "I saw the news." "Then you know I need your help. There are others. He is going to keep doing this unless we stop him." She was quiet for a moment. Then she stepped aside. She told me everything. The relationship that began exactly as mine had, charming, attentive, the particular intensity that feels like devotion when you do not yet understand it is control. The control that became restriction. The restriction that became violence. The night Daniel choked her until she lost consciousness, and then stood over her, watching with what she described as clinical curiosity, like he wanted to see what it looked like from the outside. "I was 26, she said. "I was terrified. I believed them when they said they would destroy everything I had if I kept fighting. So I took the money, and I ran, and I changed everything about myself. And I have regretted it every single day since." "Will you testify?" Her hands shook as she poured coffee. They will come for me. The Cole family does not lose. They make problems disappear. They haven't made me disappear, I said. Not yet. And I am not going to stop. Amber looked at me for a long time. Then she stood, walked to a closet, and pulled out a cardboard box. I kept everything, she said. Photos, medical records, the restraining order, the letter their lawyer sent me. I knew someday someone would come looking. I just didn't know it would take this long. I stared at 15 years of evidence, waiting for exactly this moment. One more thing, Amber said. You need to find a woman named Melissa Bradford. Daniel married her 4 years ago. He told her his first wife died in a surgery complication. He has 2 children with her. And there is a life insurance policy on Melissa. $2 million. I went very still. He wasn't just planning to run, I said slowly. No, Amber said. He was planning the chapter after. You were the loose end he was closing. Melissa was the next phase. I drove home that night, with Amber's box in my trunk, and a growing understanding that this was larger and older and more deliberately constructed than I had imagined. But the worst revelations were still ahead of me, and they arrived in the space of 48 hours. I was at the safe house the following morning when Joanna called and told me to turn on Channel 7. My mother was on the screen, Patricia Harris, 61 years old, the woman who had raised me alone after my father left, the woman I had called every Sunday for 15 years. Standing outside the Cook County Courthouse in her good blue blazer, surrounded by reporters, her hair done for the occasion. My daughter has always been prone to dramatics, Patricia said to the cameras. She had significant anxiety issues in college. Daniel has been nothing but patient and supportive throughout their marriage. This pregnancy has been extremely difficult for her mentally. I believe my son-in-law is completely innocent. Rebecca needs professional help. The story she has created about Daniel is a product of a very troubled mind. I stared at the television. My coffee went cold in my hands. Joanna called back 90 minutes later with what she had found. Daniel had been paying my mother's mortgage for 3 years. Her car, a 2022 Subaru, she had told me she had saved for herself, was purchased by Daniel through an LLC. He paid her credit card bills monthly. And she had been in contact with his lawyers since the night of the attack, providing them with my location, my plans, everything I had told her in those early weeks when I had believed she was on my side. I called my mother that evening. Her voice was warm, concerned, the voice of a loving mother. Rebecca, honey, I'm so glad you called. Whatever happens, I love you, and I want you to get the help. He strangled me for 4 minutes, Mom. I was dead on the kitchen floor. Sweetheart, that's exactly what I mean. You're confused. Daniel explained everything. Daniel explained everything, I repeated. To you. He's very worried about you. We both are. I sat very still for a moment. You chose a mortgage over your grandchild, I said. I hope the foundation holds. I hung up. I did not call again. Not everyone who shares your blood shares your interests. Chosen family is real family. Blood relatives who betray you are simply strangers who know your childhood. I learned that on a Tuesday morning, watching my mother defend the man who killed me on live television. I hope you never have to learn it that way. Joanna appeared at the safe house that afternoon with takeout and barely contained fury. Your mother went on national television, she said, to defend the man who strangled her pregnant daughter to death. Technically, I came back. Technically is doing a lot of work in that sentence. She handed me chopsticks. My mother would never do that. Mostly because I'd have told her everything immediately, and she would have driven to the Cole house with a casserole dish and a tire iron. A casserole and a tire iron. She believes in being prepared for every possible outcome. I almost smiled. It was the closest I had come in days. Then Detective Briggs called at 4 the next morning. Amber Whitfield's house, she said. Fire started around 2 a.m. Ruled accidental. Electrical fault in the basement. The evidence? Gone. All of it. Amber had gotten out with her dog and her purse. She called me from a gas station payphone at 6 a.m., her voice steady in the way that shock sometimes produces steadiness as a defense mechanism. "I'm done," she said. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I believe you. I want him to pay, but I have to be alive to want things." I did not blame her. I understood her completely. 2 days later, Detective Briggs called again. "We found Claire Dawson. She was in Oregon, living under a different name. She had agreed to meet with the DA's office." The past tense landed before she finished the sentence. "She was found yesterday morning," Briggs said. "Preliminary ruling is suicide. Pills and wine. A note." The silence between us was enormous. "In 20 years of doing this job," Briggs said quietly, "I do not believe in this level of coincidence. Can you prove it? Not yet." That night, the stress of everything triggered early labor. 34 weeks. The body reaching its absolute limit. Joanna rushed me to the hospital. 14 hours. Doctors warning about complications. The specific terror of fighting for 2 lives at once. At 6:23 in the evening, Emma Grace Cole came into the world. 5 pounds, 2 ounces, screaming with the outraged, healthy insistence of a baby who had decided to be fine and was committing to it completely. They placed her on my chest and I cried. "You saved me," I whispered to her. That night in the kitchen, your heartbeat was the last thing I was fighting for. "You saved me, Emma." Her hand closed around my finger and held on, and I made her a promise. The kind you only make when you have nothing left to lose and everything left to fight for. I promised her I would finish it. Emma was 6 days old when I wrote the post. 3 in the morning, Emma asleep in the bassinet beside me, the safe house quiet, and I opened a new account. A name that was mine, but had never been public. And I wrote. Every word felt like something I had been holding in my body for months, finally being released. My name is Rebecca Cole. 6 weeks ago, my husband strangled me until my heart stopped. I was dead for 4 minutes. Since then, his family has wiped my evidence, burned a witness's home, and paid my own mother to call me unstable on national television. This is what I know, what I can prove, and what I believe happened to the women who came before me. Their names were Claire Dawson and Amber Whitfield. One is dead, one is in hiding. Both were paid to disappear. His name is Daniel Cole. His mother is Margaret Cole. His father is Robert Cole, a sitting federal judge. And this family has been doing this for 20 years. I named names, included documents, medical photos, court records, the dismissals, the timeline, and at the end, I wrote this. If I disappear, if I have an accident or a sudden illness or am found dead of anything at all, you know who did it. This post is my insurance policy. The Cole family silences victims, but I am not staying silent, and now 4 million people have heard me. I hit publish at 4:17 in the morning. By 6 a.m., 10,000 views. By noon, 1.3 million. By evening, my name was trending in 43 states. The response was staggering. Thousands of messages from other survivors. Pro bono lawyers flooding my inbox. A senator's office calling Joanna's phone. It felt, for the first time since all of this began, like justice was not just possible, but incoming. The Cole family went silent for 72 hours. The silence of wealthy people who just realized money cannot solve this problem, Joanna observed. My second favorite sound. What's your first? Handcuffs clicking, obviously. Then Margaret Cole held a press conference, poised, pearl earrings. Perfectly composed, she dabbed at her eyes with a white handkerchief at the appropriate moments. Our family is being attacked by a deeply troubled woman. Rebecca Cole has a documented history of mental instability. Her accusations are completely fabricated. My son is innocent, and we will prove that in court. The only real victim here is Daniel, a loving father whose reputation is being destroyed by lies. A reporter raised his hand. Mrs. Cole, what about the allegations of witness intimidation? The fire at Amber Whitfield's home? Baseless theories from a woman in crisis? What about claims that your family paid off previous victims? We do not dignify slander with a response. She walked away without taking further questions. She's scared, Joanna said. That is what scared looks like when you can afford a publicist and a pearl necklace. I was not as certain. Margaret Cole had been managing crises for decades. She would not collapse easily, and she didn't. 3 days after her press conference, while I was researching her background, Melissa Bradford Cole arrived at my safe house. She knocked on my door on a Tuesday afternoon. I do not know how she found the address. I did not ask. She was in her mid-30s, blonde, dressed carefully. The specific kind of careful that comes from holding yourself together with sheer will and good tailoring. Red-rimmed eyes. The slightly unfocused look of a woman whose entire understanding of her own life had collapsed within the past 72 hours. I recognized it. I had worn that expression myself not very long ago. You're Rebecca, she said, and you're Melissa. He told me you died in surgery, an appendix complication. He cried when he told me. I held him. She said it without accusation, just the flat, devastating fact of it. I'm sure he was very convincing, I said. I thought I was healing him, she said. I thought I was special, that I got to be the person who helped him through his grief. We all think we're special, I said. That is how it works. That is the entire point. I let her in, and what she brought with her changed everything. Going public is not always the right move, but when private systems fail you, when evidence disappears and witnesses are silenced, and the people supposed to protect you are protecting your abuser instead, sometimes the court of public opinion is the only court left. State clearly, publicly, who you believe would be responsible if something happens to you. It creates accountability that money has a much harder time erasing. Melissa sat on my couch with the careful posture of a woman who had been holding herself upright through force of will for several days running. I sat across from her. The baby monitor on the table between us picked up Emma's steady breathing from the next room. I have 2 children with him, Melissa said. A boy and a girl. Every time I look at their faces now, I see his. There was nothing useful I could say to that, so I said nothing. She reached into her bag and produced a folder, thick, organized with the methodical precision of a woman who had spent the past week in a controlled panic, gathering everything she could find before anyone could take it from her. I started looking after I saw your post, carefully, without letting him know. He was at his parents' house by then. The restraining order kept him away from our home. Inside the folder, offshore bank accounts I had never found in my own research, properties in Colorado, Florida, and outside Edinburgh and Scotland. Shell companies nested inside other shell companies, the infrastructure of a man who had been building escape routes for years. And then she handed me a single sheet of paper, a life insurance policy. The insured, Rebecca Cole. The beneficiary, Margaret Cole. Policy initiated 18 months ago. Daniel Cole listed as the authorizing party. Margaret Cole's signature on the co-authorization line. I looked at it for a long time. He wasn't just planning to run, I said slowly. No, Melissa said. And he wasn't just planning to eventually disappear. Your death wasn't a consequence of his violence getting out of control. It was a scheduled event. The payout from your policy would have funded the next phase. Margaret was the beneficiary because she was managing the finances of the whole operation. She wasn't just covering for him, I said. She was his business partner, Melissa said. She has been for years. She decides who gets paid off and who gets something more permanent. She coordinates the shell companies and the evidence destruction and the witness management. Daniel provides the violence. Margaret provides the infrastructure. The room was very quiet. How long have you known? I asked. I found the first account 3 days after your post went up. I've been finding more things every day since. I couldn't stop once I started. She looked at me directly. He was going to do to me what he did to you eventually. When I became inconvenient. When I asked one too many questions. I found a second policy, Rebecca. A newer one. On you. On me. Taken out 8 months ago. He was building the next exit while he was still using me as cover. I sat back and let the full shape of it settle around me. 3 generations of the Cole family. Robert Cole using his judicial position to make charges disappear. Margaret Cole managing the money, the cover-ups, the payments, the destruction of evidence. And Daniel, raised from childhood to believe that women were manageable problems and his mother would always be there to clean up whatever he created. It was not just a family that protected an abuser. It was a family enterprise. There's one more thing, Melissa said. She reached back into the folder and produced another document. Medical records. 30 years old. An emergency room in Chicago. The patient name, Margaret Hartwell, later Cole. The injuries documented over 4 years of her first marriage were extensive and unmistakable. Margaret Cole had herself been a victim of domestic violence. Her first husband, before Robert Cole, had been systematically brutal. She had escaped, married a powerful judge, built an empire of protection and safety around herself. And then she had raised her son to believe that what had been done to her was simply one side of a transaction, the weak side. And that power was the only protection that mattered. The woman who survived abuse had not broken the cycle. She had monetized it. I don't forgive her, I said, looking at those 30-year-old photographs of a young woman's injuries. You don't get to survive violence and then build a system that inflicts it on others. No, Melissa agreed, but understanding her tells you how to beat her. She looked at me across the coffee table. 2 women who had loved the same man. 2 wives who had nearly become 2 very different kinds of statistics. I'm going to testify, Melissa said, against Daniel, against Margaret, against all of it. I have the documents. I have recordings. I made it once I knew what I was looking for. I have enough to bury this entire family. They will come after you, I said. Let them try. Something had hardened behind her eyes, the particular hardness of a woman who has processed her grief and arrived at the other side of it, where there is only resolution. I have lawyers now. I have my own money that he doesn't know about. And I have absolutely nothing left to lose. We sat in the quiet of the safe house. Welcome to the worst club in America, I finally said. Something almost like a smile crossed Melissa's face. Do we have t-shirts? Not yet, I said, but we have a court date. The trial began on a cold morning in early March. 8 months after Daniel Cole strangled his pregnant wife to death on a kitchen floor in Chicago. The courthouse was surrounded. Cameras, satellite trucks, reporters from every major network. My viral post had turned this into the most watched domestic violence case in a decade. Prosecutors from 2 other jurisdictions had filed additional charges based on evidence that surfaced in its wake. I sat in the front row of the gallery. Joanna on my left, Melissa on my right. Emma was at home, safe, warm, entirely unaware, with two of Joanna's most trusted friends and a private security guard Joanna had hired and presented to me as a fait accompli approximately 48 hours before the trial began. Non-negotiable, she had said. I need you in that courtroom and focused. Emma is covered. Go win. Daniel was let in wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He was thinner than I remembered. Prison had not agreed with him. I noted this with a feeling I will not pretend was entirely without satisfaction. Margaret Cole sat directly behind the defense table, every hair in place, composed with the specific composure of a woman who has spent decades managing catastrophe and has developed genuine expertise at appearing unaffected. She did not look at me. Not once, in the entire first day of testimony, did she look at me. That told me everything I needed to know about how frightened she actually was. The prosecution built its case with the deliberate, architectural patience of someone constructing something that needed to hold weight for decades. Medical evidence first. Photographs of my bruised throat. Expert testimony explaining that the injuries were consistent with sustained manual strangulation and inconsistent with any accidental cause. Documentation of 4 minutes of cardiac arrest. The clinical language of exactly what had been done to me, spoken aloud in a courtroom while the jury listened and Daniel Cole sat at his table and did not look at me either. Kate Morrison, the paramedic, testified to what she had found at the scene, the marks on my neck, the position of my body. My first words when I regained consciousness. In 8 years of responding to domestic violence calls, Kate said, I have never had a victim's first concern be the evidence. Rebecca Cole was not thinking about herself. She was thinking about making sure he could not do this to anyone else. Anyone. Amber Whitfield testified via secure video link from an undisclosed location. Her hands were visibly shaking on screen. Her voice was not. He choked me until I lost consciousness, she said. And when I came back, he was standing over me watching, like he was curious about something, like he wanted to see what it looked like from the outside. Several jurors looked away from the screen. 2 did not. Melissa testified next. The lies she had been told, the life she had built on a false foundation, the children who would grow up knowing what their father had done, the insurance policy with my name on it. I didn't know, she said. I need this jury to understand that I did not know what he was, but I know now. And I am here because these women deserve to have someone stand next to them who could speak to what Daniel Cole does when no one is watching. Then the prosecutor called Margaret Cole to the stand. She walked to the witness chair with the composure of a woman attending a board meeting she had already decided the outcome of. She arranged her expression into something suggesting maternal concern and cooperative good faith. The prosecutor placed documents on the table in front of her, one at a time, with a deliberate, unhurried patience that was its own form of pressure. Wire transfer, $450,000 to Claire Dawson, 14 days after Claire filed assault charges against Daniel. Payment to a digital security firm, traced through 3 shell companies back to the Cole Family Trust, dated 3 days before Rebecca's audio recordings were remotely wiped. A life insurance policy. Rebecca Cole's name, Margaret Cole as beneficiary, Daniel Cole as initiating party, Margaret Cole's signature on the co-authorization line. Mrs. Cole, did you authorize this policy? Margaret's composure fractured, one hairline crack visible in the slight tightening around her eyes. I was protecting my family. From what, Mrs. Cole? From women who wanted to destroy us. From women your son strangled, you mean. You have no idea what that boy has been through, what I sacrificed. What have you sacrificed, Mrs. Cole? The prosecutor's voice was completely level. Claire Dawson is dead. Amber Whitfield lost her home and everything in it. Rebecca Cole was dead on her kitchen floor for 4 minutes while carrying a child who had done nothing to your family at all. What exactly have you sacrificed? Margaret had no answer. The prosecutor turned to face the jury. Margaret Cole was herself a victim of domestic violence 30 years ago. For 4 years, she endured what her son later inflicted on others. She survived. She rebuilt. She married a powerful man and created a life insulated by money and judicial protection. And then she raised her son to believe that women were manageable, that violence was a tool, and that she would always be there to make the evidence disappear. She paused. Let it settle. She did not break the cycle. She built a business around it. She managed the finances of her son's violence for 20 years. She decided who received payments and who received something more permanent. And she planned in writing, with her signature on the documents, for Rebecca Cole's death to fund the next chapter. She placed the final document on the table. It ends today. The deliberation took 4 hours and 11 minutes. Daniel Cole, guilty, attempted murder, assault, bigamy, obstruction of justice, financial fraud, 47 years to life. Margaret Cole, guilty, conspiracy, obstruction, accessory after the fact, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, 22 years. Robert Cole resigned from the federal bench the following morning. When they led Daniel out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he turned to look at me one final time. His mouth began to form the same words he had said in my hospital room 8 months earlier, the threat he had been making since the beginning. Goodbye, Daniel, I said. Before he could finish, I turned away first. For the first time in 6 years, I turned away first, and I did not look back. 2 years later, I stood on a stage in front of 300 people at a domestic violence awareness conference in Minneapolis. My book, 4 Minutes, A Survivor's Guide to Leaving, had debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list and was in its 7th printing. More importantly, the nonprofit I had founded, First Response, had helped over 2,000 women safely document their situations, access legal resources, and fund emergency exits in its first 18 months of operation. We had a hotline staffed 24 hours. We had partnerships with legal aid organizations in 31 states. We had helped women I would never meet leave situations I recognized in my bones. Emma was 2 years old. She had her father's eyes and my stubbornness and Joanna's complete inability to stay quiet when she had something to say, which, oh my God, as Joanna pointed out frequently, was entirely my fault for making Joanna her godmother. Melissa was in therapy, rebuilding carefully, co-parenting her children with the help of a support network she had spent 2 years constructing from the ground up. She called every few weeks. She was doing the slow, non-linear work of reconstructing a self after it has been built on someone else's lies. It was hard work. She was doing it anyway. Amber had relocated. New city, new name, new start. She called on the first Sunday of every month. The last time we spoke, she told me she had adopted a second dog and was sleeping through the night without checking the locks. Kate Morrison, the paramedic who had kept my heart beating with her hands on a kitchen floor in Chicago, was sitting in the 3rd row of the conference hall. She had brought her partner and was crying during my speech and would spend the reception afterward insisting to everyone who would listen that she was not crying and never cried. I had given her a copy of the book with a dedication I will not repeat here because it was private and it was for her. But I will say that there are people in every story like this one who do not get named in headlines, who show up in the darkest moment of someone else's life and simply do the work with steady hands and a clear voice. Kate was one of those people. She deserves to be remembered. I stood at the microphone and looked out at the room. Survivors, social workers, law enforcement, advocates, researchers, people who spent their professional lives, and often their personal lives, in the specific gravity field of this particular kind of pain. They were not here for entertainment. They were here because they understood something that the rest of the world still struggled to hold on to. That this was not a private problem. It was not a matter of individual relationships gone wrong. It was a pattern, a system, a set of behaviors as predictable as weather, once you learn to read the signs. People ask me, I said into the microphone, why I didn't leave sooner, why I stayed with someone who was hurting me, and I used to flinch at that question, used to hear it as an accusation, as though the problem was my failure to act rather than his choice to harm. I paused. Let the room be quiet for a moment. But I have learned something about that question. The people who ask it are not always trying to blame. Sometimes they are genuinely trying to understand, and the answer is worth giving clearly and without apology. I looked at the faces in the front rows. Some were nodding, some were very still. Leaving is the most dangerous moment. Statistically, the moment of leaving is when women in abusive relationships are most likely to be killed. This is not a feeling or a theory. It is documented fact. It is in the research. It is in the case files of every investigator in this room. I let that land. I did not stay because something was broken in me. I stayed because part of me, the part that had spent 9 years studying how dangerous people think and what they do when they feel cornered, understood that I had one chance to do this correctly, and I was not going to waste it by moving too fast or with too little evidence. So I documented, I planned, I built an exit that could survive his lawyers and his money and his mother's 20 years of practice making women disappear. And when every private system failed me, when the evidence was wiped and the witnesses were silenced, and my own mother appeared on television to call me unstable, I became too loud for money to silence. That is not a special skill. That is not journalism training or luck or anything particular to me. That is available to every person in this room and every person listening to this recording. Document, plan, tell one trusted person. Make a record that exists outside your own home. I paused again, longer this time, and know this: asking for help is not weakness. Reaching out is not weakness. Surviving is not weakness. Surviving is the most strategic, the most courageous, and the most difficult thing a person in that situation can do. And none of us do it alone. After the speech, a young woman approached me, 22, maybe 23, bruising along her jaw, careful makeup doing its best. A posture I recognized immediately. Slightly turned inward, shoulders drawn toward the center, the specific physical language of a person who had spent long enough making herself smaller that it had become automatic. I had stood exactly like that for 3 years. He says it's not a big deal, she whispered. He says he just loses control sometimes. He always apologizes right after. I took both her hands in mine. Strangulation, even once, even briefly, is one of the single strongest statistical predictors of homicide and domestic violence situations. It is not losing control. It is demonstrating control. It is showing you exactly what he is capable of and exactly what he will use if you do not comply. There is a difference between those things, a significant one. She looked at me. Her eyes were full. You deserve to leave safely, I said. And there are people whose entire purpose is to help you do exactly that. I gave her my card, the hotline number, the name of a shelter with beds available that night. I held her hands for a moment longer than I needed to, so she would feel that she was not invisible, that someone had seen her. I do not know if she used the number. I never found out. But I hoped. I still hope, every time, because hope, I have learned, is not naive. In the right hands, with the right preparation behind it, hope is a form of strategy. That evening, I drove home to the small house I had bought with my book advance. My house, my name on the deed, my money, my life, mine in a way that no part of my life during those 6 years with Daniel had ever truly been mine. Emma heard my key in the lock and ran toward the door. She arrived at approximately the same moment I got it open, which was essentially the same thing as opening it herself as far as she was concerned. She held up a drawing, crayon, purple and green and yellow, abstract with the total confidence of a 2-year-old who has not yet been taught to doubt her own creative vision. Pretty? She asked. So pretty, I said. Just like you. I picked her up, held her, felt the particular weight of her, still small enough to hold entirely, already too opinionated to stay still for long. She smelled like bath soap and crayons and something specific that I knew was just her, that had been just her from the first moment they placed her on my chest in that delivery room. I stood at my window and watched the sun go down. I thought about Daniel in a federal correctional facility in downstate Illinois, thinner than he had been, working through the first of 47 years. I thought about Margaret Cole, presumably still composed, still managing, still adapting the way she had always adapted, but doing it now inside a women's correctional facility where her money and her position and her pearl earrings could not follow her. I thought about Claire Dawson, who had survived 12 years in hiding under a name that was not hers, who had agreed to come forward, and who had not survived long enough to see justice arrive. I thought about all the women whose names I had never found, the ones who took the money and the silence and tried to rebuild from it, the ones who did not survive to try anything at all. I would tell their stories, every resource First Response had, every platform I had built from the rubble of my own marriage. I would use it to make sure none of them were forgotten, that their silence, forced or chosen or permanent, did not mean they had never spoken. Emma was getting heavy against my shoulder. I carried her to her room and tucked her into bed and turned off the lamp and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her in the dark. I love you, I whispered, and I am going to spend my whole life teaching you what real love looks like, what it feels like, how to know the difference between someone who wants to know you and someone who wants to own you. No one gets to hurt you and call it love. Remember that. She was already asleep, but someday she would understand. Someday she would know exactly who her mother was and exactly what her mother survived, and exactly what her mother built from the surviving. I wanted her to know all of it. Not as a trauma she had to carry, but as a truth she could stand on. I checked the locks. Once, just once, not 17 times anymore. Not the counting, recounting, the ritual reassurance of fear made habitual. Just once, the way people check locks when they live in a house that belongs to them, and they are not afraid of what might be waiting on the other side. Then I went to bed. No nightmares, no counting seconds in the dark, no held breath when I heard a sound from another room. Just the quiet of a house that was mine, and the sound of my daughter breathing in the next room, and the particular, specific, irreplaceable piece of a woman who fought for her life with everything she had and won. I was dead for 4 minutes, but I have been alive every single minute since. Not because someone saved me, not because the system protected me, not because I was lucky or special or unusually strong, because I saved myself. I documented when they told me I was imagining things. I planned when they told me I had no options. I spoke when they told me no one would believe me. And when they made me too small to see, I made myself too loud to ignore. That is available to you, right now, exactly as you are. If you are listening to this and something feels familiar, if any part of this story lives in your body and not just your mind, I need you to hear me. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining it. You are not dramatic. You are not the problem. Start today. Tell one person. Write one thing down and date it. Save one piece of evidence somewhere he cannot access. Put $1 in an account he does not know about. You are worth saving, and you are stronger than you have been allowed to believe. I promise. Editorial closing statement. This content was carefully researched, constructed, and manually edited by our team with the sole purpose of delivering meaningful lessons and genuine value to every person who watches it. We believe stories have the power to heal, to protect, and to save lives. If this one touched you, carry its message forward. And remember, you are stronger than you have been allowed to believe. Until next time,